Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the 10 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder of Financing Solutions. And Financing Solutions for the last 13 years has been providing easy to set up lines of credit for small businesses. We are a direct lender. We are providing lines of credit with our own money. And I've had lines of credit my whole life for my businesses, both business and personal. So I know how valuable they are. I'm passionate about the idea that every entrepreneur should have a line of credit just in case. I will be your host for today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast. And if you're interested in learning more about a line of credit for your business, please visit our website at fscreditline.com. Again, that's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com. A little bit about me. Over the last 25 plus years, I've built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range, including 2 companies that have made the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in the United States. I love learning from people with business experience. And today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Robert Poole from Total Business Results. And before we get to Robert, today's sponsor for today's podcast is Technology Management Group, also known as TMG. For the past 30 plus years, they've been involved in the cybersecurity space. So if you have any cybersecurity concerns or issues, please feel free to reach out to them at cyberctrl.net. Again, that's cyberctrl.net. Our guest today is Robert Poole. He is the co-founder of Total Business Results. He helps entrepreneurs grow their business through B2B cold calling, appointment setting, and lead generation. He is a graduate at West Point, previously an Army officer, and has over 25 years of experience in B2B cold calling and owning a B2B marketing firm. Robert, welcome to today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
Great. Thank you. It's great to be here, Stephen.
So is your primary work nowadays in cold calling help, or is it in lead generation, like building a lead generation system?
Well, of course, we've traditionally been a lead generation based upon cold calling company. That's how we got started and how we thrived for many years. About 5 or 6 years ago, we started getting a little bit more into the advice side of the business and started doing some business coaching and that sort of thing associated with cold calling and growing your business throughout that way, using cold calling in whatever way is appropriate for your business. So kind of both to answer your question.
So I picked this. When we found you and you talked about joining the podcast. Cold calling. I did it 20 years ago. Not even that, and more farther along than that. And there is a business principle that I know, which is sometimes making something old new again is a good strategy, right? People are still doing cold calling. I am. That's why I'm having you on, because I think it's a good topic. I think it makes sense. But, as I mean, this podcast is to help people get over $10 million in size, right?
Yeah.
I think if cold calling is your primary method of generating leads, you're going to struggle getting over the $10 million mark. Is that fair or no?
Well, like any good lawyer would say, it depends.
Yeah.
Cold calling is one of those things, and you're right. Things have changed certainly since you and I started cold calling. I mean, I started back in the mid '90s, and certainly a different environment than today. Back then, you were still getting calls at your dinner table, so to speak, for consumer-based things. But it's still the ultimate answer is that it's still a very viable marketing technique for businesses when you're calling B2B exclusively. And but it's like everything, 20 something years ago, things like social media, LinkedIn, things like that didn't exist. And so, like you said, that was kind of the old school traditional way to do things. And in my opinion, not only is cold calling still relevant, but it actually enhances and it's been added to by these other marketing techniques that we now use. That in the past you would have to pair it with, let's say, direct mailers, so to speak, or things like that when you were trying to reach a high-end decision maker. These days, you can integrate it with other marketing techniques, and so it's actually more powerful in a lot of ways than it was in the past because we can customize so many things. There's a perception, like you said, that most people think, well, geez, cold calling, that's ancient, that's gone by the wayside. And the truth is, our company has, the last time I checked, we'd made like 35 million, calls in the last 20 years or so. And for the right businesses, it can certainly make sense. If you're selling $27 widgets, whatever, you're probably not going to do that through a cold call. That doesn't make sense. Like you said, you're not going to get to 10 million of revenue doing that. But if you're selling a $100,000 CRM system, that personalization is not going to come through. Somebody's not going to put it in their shopping cart and, buy it that way. So it really depends on the situation, but it's definitely a relevant thing. We have clients that regularly make, we just had a client 2 or 3 weeks ago that I think I think she said the commission on his deal was like 430,000, so it certainly works. It's just got to be done the right way, and it's got to be done with the right audience for the right types of products and services.
Stu, I mean, people what products are you seeing now that what industries are people in, or products that they're selling is still viable for cold calling? I mean, you mentioned CRM systems. I imagine large software packages, those type of things. What else would you say are viable solutions for cold calling?
Yeah, well, I'll give you our big three. Our big three, so to speak, has always been things like business brokerage, the M&A space. A lot of
Yep.
because of the size of the deals that happen. Another one is commercial insurance, which has become a very competitive and commoditized type of business. But the personalization aspect that cold calling gives you really has helped a lot of our clients get out of that struggle. And then I would say that another big one is managed IT. Well, a lot of companies, and they don't have to be selling necessarily that $100,000 product, but selling something that is a little bit more complicated. Again, takes that personalization, that person to person type of thing. So those are our three big ones. We have other smaller industries, commercial real estate. There's financing stuff. There is, benefits. There's a variety of different industries that it works for. As I said, it tends to work better for obviously higher ticket items, and it works for industries where you need a personal relationship in order to sell whatever you're selling. In those scenarios, it tends to work. But it's like everything. Cold calling is certainly not the answer to every situation. And unfortunately, in today's world in marketing, every guru out there will tell you, well, you got to run Facebook ads, or you got to network on LinkedIn, or you got to do this or that. And usually they have an agenda. And I'll be the first one to tell you that cold calling is not for everybody. Everything works sometimes, but most things will not work for your business. So the key is finding those that will. And cold calling compared or complemented with other parts of the marketing program can be really effective, again, for the right situation.
What do you think the going rate is? So you're in Phoenix. I'm in northern New Jersey. It doesn't matter because you probably may not have the person making the calls in your office. I guess there's two ways of doing. You hire a full fledged salesperson, and that's their job, right? That their job is to close deals for you, and part of that is cold calling. Or you have, a telemarketer that you hire, let's use that word loosely. They're a lower paid person. They get the lead warm, and then, the owner or somebody else jumps in at that point. Um, if you're using a cold caller, uh, you know, I don't know, $35, $40 an hour. Are we talking that?
Yeah, for somebody good, I would say, you're probably, again, you've got two different scenarios. You've got, like you were talking about, the sales end of it, which is a different skill set than the lead gen aspect of it.
Right.
But for your telemarketers, for a lack of a better term, your lead gen people, that's obviously going to be lower end, and depending on cost of living, of course, and all that, I would say, you could probably get, in the $25 an hour range, if you were hiring somebody direct. If you, unfortunately, a lot of people make the mistake of trying to hire somebody at minimum wage because they think this is, I'm going to say it, a monkey with a phone, and you get very poor results doing that. Because that's one thing we've found over the years is that the people that we use, it takes quite a bit of intelligence, and it takes a very special personality to be able to do a repetitive task like that over and over again. It's a different task than having a sales rep, for instance. So you kind of almost need both. And a sales rep, like you said, is a higher end person that's working those leads, but not the person that's generating them. So I wish I could give you an absolute answer, but I would just say that don't expect to pay minimum wage. But you are going to pay, a lower end of the spectrum for a lead gen person versus somebody who's actually closing the sales, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I did forget. I mean, I have another company called Elite Fuel Funding that I own. And, 5 years ago, we did hire someone at 25, I don't even know what we paid her, $30 an hour to call on funeral homes. And, so what has changed now with the fact that do people still have office phones? I mean, I do, but office phones versus cellular phones, how has that changed things?
Yeah, it's definitely from the person doing the cold calling. It's certainly changed. The technology has changed. Obviously, back when I started, there was no such thing as an auto dialer, at least for individuals. That was something only large corporations were playing with at the time. But that had its benefits actually. And so, of course, now you've got the technology, and we've all gotten used to, excuse me, remote and all that kind of stuff. So that part has changed. The overall concept of what you're doing, the skill set and everything, it really hasn't changed that much, over the years. When we're looking for somebody to help us with that, so we need to find, that person that knows enough about our business to sound intelligent. Because, like, for instance, when we do interviews, we're looking for accents and pairing them with different parts of the country and that sort of thing. So, you're in New Jersey. So if you were calling nationwide, I don't know what your market is, but for a particular product, but you probably don't want callers from New Jersey calling down into the deep South, and vice versa. And I mean, let's be real. People from the Northeast, sometimes think that everybody from the South that speaks slow is a dummy, and everybody from the South that thinks everybody from the Northeast that speaks, fast and more gruff, more businesslike is, kind of jerks. So you have to, match people with their skill set and their accents and things like that. So there's quite a bit to it, but the basics haven't changed. If that answers your question. And just like any good principles in marketing or anything else in life, truth principles don't change over time. Just around the edges, we change technology and things like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I'm not contradicting you what you're saying about we actually had hired a much much older woman who sounded like your grandma,
Hmm.
and you couldn't be mean to her. And I thought, I think sometimes you have to think outside the box of, when you're doing something, you don't follow what the experts say. You go against the grain. And she was really able to, she's very chatty. She was able to open people up. to over a period of time, stay in touch with them. And, she loved what she did. She really had a passion for it. It was a good find,
Mhm.
So, when let's say you have people that you're helping, you're coaching them, but they're coming to you and they're saying listen, I need help. We're not generating leads. We don't have a good lead generation system. Would it take me through what questions you usually ask them to determine if cold calling is the right type of thing for them? I know we talked about a bigger ticket item, but what
Mhm.
else would you ask them? If it's maybe they're more better geared toward SEO, maybe they're better geared toward pay for click, other types of things. So what are you typically looking for?
I think the number one thing, and I think this is just in business in general, as you know, it comes down to the type of customer or client that you're going after, and not only where those people sort of congregate, if you will, but how they consume things, how they consume their media, how do they get their information, how do they like to do business? So, for instance, typically. I mean, it's a stereotype, but the younger generation is more comfortable with, social media and all online relationships. I'm still, in the old fart category of, still getting used to social media, and I still like talking to people and that sort of thing. What I'm getting at is that the approach depends on the type of person you're getting at. For instance, our clients we did a survey particularly with our M&A business broker group, and we found that I think it was like 73% of them said that they did not use social media at all for business stuff. And this was maybe 2 years ago, so I'm sure it's changed a little bit. But the point is that those people are much more likely to respond to a cold call because they get to speak to somebody versus somebody who doesn't want to speak to anybody, who's somebody who that personal relationship is not that important, that they're more comfortable with in an online scenario. So it starts with the customer, I would say. So if your customer tends to respond to and likes a personal relationship more, that's something that cold calling makes more sense for, given the other things. The industry, the size of the company. If you're calling $100 million company, it's unlikely you're going to get through to the CEO, no matter how many times you call. I mean, you could be like Bud Fox in Wall Street and bag the elephant, so to speak. If anybody's old enough to remember that. But largely, you're going to have a better uh, chance of getting through to somebody the smaller the company, obviously. I mean, you have a company with 5, 10 employees, and once in a while the owner will pick up the phone, so it's a different contact ratio. So, you have to balance not only how does the decision maker, are you calling for the owner of a company? Are you looking at the director of HR or, an office manager at a medical practice, so you have to look at not only how accessible they are, but how do they like to buy? It goes back to the buying strategy. And I mean, this is all marketing principles just in general, and cold calling is no different. So I would say that it's size of the company and looking at the buyer profile and how that person prefers to buy just in general is the two things that we look to start off with to evaluate if a company it makes sense. And of course, again, you've got to have a product or service that's a high end enough, high ticket enough product or service that it makes sense also. So I would say probably those three things are the big ones that you ask up front.
So let's say that you've listened to your client's business, and you said, I think yes, the criteria meets the criteria for using cold calling as one of the marketing tools. Um, what are some of the things that you then look at or advise your clients on at that point?
You know, the two biggest things that we find that can really cause a campaign to fail are the lack of a good list, and also the lack of good messaging, i.e., a phone script. So we spend a lot of times on those. Unfortunately, and this is where probably another qualifier in a business, even if you a business says, okay, here's my perfect dream client. This is what I'm looking for. We can get to them. They like the personalization. That's their buying strategy. All those things we just talked about. But then there's no way to really get a list easily of those people. There's no way to access that publicly or get it somehow. That can be a problem. So because and there's two different ways to do lead gen. There's the just kind of blow through a list, and it's a one time type of thing versus a more high touch where you're continue to follow up with people over time, like you said, and the lady that was working with you that built relationships over time. That's a different type of cold call. It's more of a relationship building thing versus a one off. So you got to look at the list quality and see, is it even accessible? And most of the time you can come up with something. It just depends on the quality of it, because the quality of the list is really going to drive your results. Sometimes depending on the margin in your product, you can afford to, you could cold call for 10 years, and pay for it and it'd still be worth it, type of thing. And then the other aspect is the messaging. Unfortunately, a lot of people come to us and they've got preconceived notions about, how do we present our product or service? How do we position ourselves? And what we're typically taught is, you want to tell them, about your company is competitive because it does this, this, and this. It's got all these great features that your competitors maybe don't have. But the truth is that the prospect on the other end of the line doesn't care about you. And so we have to develop a script in a very intentional way and also a simplistic way, something that instead of the 6-page script that sometimes our clients bring us and think, hey, this is great, I put this together, that we have to narrow that down, get that messaging tightened up so that it's very, very quick and gets to the point quick. Is as business people, we all know, we're swamped and we don't have time. And if somebody cold calls us, they're interrupting us, and they've got to get our attention very quickly and give us a reason to listen to them for even 30 seconds. And so if we don't spend a lot of time on that messaging, that really will kill any kind of campaign. And so we've spent 20 plus years working on that and trying to tailor those messages and make the ones that are effective to be able to break through that initial resistance that you're always going to get to something that's an interruption, basically, which is what a cold call is.
What do you do nowadays about the idea that people really aren't picking up their phones? Everything's going to voicemail. What are you advising your clients on that?
We typically, there's obviously there's two ways to do it. You can make the calls and, if they don't answer, move on type of thing. Or you can, some clients prefer to leave voicemails. I'm not a big fan of that, just because we've done studies on it and it doesn't seem to be real effective. Yes, it's possible to get a call back, but I don't know if you've ever received a voicemail from somebody and they said, hey, this is Bob with, XYZ Enterprises, or this is just Bob, call me back at this number. And you don't know what it's about or why they're calling. And so, but you think, well, this could be important. I better call them back. Then you find out it's a sales call. And, it's like that does not start things off well, usually.
Yeah.
So it's my personal preference, and based upon our research, we usually don't recommend leaving voicemails. It's better to, hey, you call, you don't get through, put them in the queue to call them again. And because you can recall the same numbers over and over again over a period of time, every week or two, if you're not getting through to somebody without it being harassment. We just as a funny note, we did have a sales rep one time that worked for us that called a prospect 27 times in one day. And, the prospect finally said, hey, please don't call me anymore. But so we, of course, parted ways with that sales rep. So I would say it's okay to be tenacious and recall the same number, but don't call them 27 times in one day. That definitely won't work. So.
Yeah. Um, is there good software that's out there now that you know, dials the phone number automatically, you know, is picking up, telling you when someone's picking up, is leaving voicemails for you. Is there anything that you're seeing that's third party, that's cloud based, that is very viable now for those type of calls?
Yes, that's it's actually one of the real benefits in the last 20 years, and one of the things I've seen is that increase in technology. And because of cloud-based stuff, it allows us to remotely, even if it's just you, by yourself for a small operation, it can be very affordable. So there's a variety of different softwares, of course. Five9 is one of the big ones. Constant Contact, or they changed their name now, it's Nice. But either of those two we've used and very successfully. They've got all those capabilities, like you said, to leaving auto voicemails and things like that. And I would say that, there's if you remember back in the 90s when residential calling was still a thing, one of people's biggest complaints and why they changed some of the laws was because of the auto dialers that would give you that pause and hang up on you and all that kind of stuff. And that technology is still available. It's gotten better with trying to figure out different algorithms to figure that stuff out. But in general, we've still found that serial calling, dialing one number after another, is still the way to go. Using an auto dialer type of solution that is dialing multiple numbers can really get you in trouble. And it depends on the size of your group, so to speak. I mean, if you've got 30 agents or something all calling at the same time, it tends to work a little bit better. But if you've got just a handful of people calling in your office, or you're hiring a small group, I think you really want to avoid that, because these are things where we want to focus on the quality, not necessarily the quantity. When it comes to these high-end B2B calls, it's very hard to get through to somebody, so you don't want to poison that well by having them get hung up on, or any number of problems. So to me, it's not worth it, and that's what our research shows, is just old school serial one after another dialing is the most effective.
What about, like, for example, in our company, we have a really great CRM system that has an auto dial feature on it where you just hit a button and it dials it. And then, I love it. And, I certainly saves, it sounds silly because you're only dialing, 9 numbers, but, or whatever. How many numbers it's 8 numbers, right? So, but if you're doing that a lot, it makes a big difference. Is there software that's out there which will automatically dial for you the phone number, and has made it very easy?
Yeah, as I mentioned, those two companies, Five9 and In Contact slash Nice, NICE, they both have both the sort of serial dialing, which I was mentioning, and also a progressive dialing, they call it, where it does exactly that. And I guess it's for different uses. I'll put it this way: the two profiles we talked about, sort of a lead gen person that is just out there generating the leads for somebody else to follow up on. That's the person that we want those repetitive calls going to, where it's one after another. And we also, it's better that they're not manually clicking that button every time, because it's very easy to click the button, let the phone ring, or to have a conversation and then stop, okay, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. And, so something that serves up the calls one after another kind of keeps it going. But the opposite is true with somebody who's actually trying to have the high quality conversation, a sales rep, which is more appropriate for what you're talking about, where, a specific CRM, they've got all the information and everything, and they're trying to have a quality conversation. Then they want to manually dial that. They need to take notes afterwards, all that good stuff. So, but either of those two platforms, and those are my favorite two, very large platforms as well, and they're reliable. Both of them have that type of capability, and there's a gazillion smaller ones out there that have the technology is getting to be pretty common. So just a little Google searching, you can find whatever capability is more what you're trying to do. There's a lot of solutions out there.
This is my last question, and that is, when you get calls of people who hear about you and they are doing cold calls, and you agree when you speak to them that that's the best way for them to go. What is usually the reason why they're calling you?
Typically, this is not news to anybody, but most people don't like to cold call. It's I think it's right up there with they talk about the human fears, death, and then public. I think public speaking is number one, then death, and I think cold calling is pretty short after that. So I think a lot of people come number one because they don't want to do it themselves, and they find that it's hard to find individuals in their local market, or even people that they can hire online to do the work and manage them, because they don't know what to look for just because they don't have the experience. And so they're typically looking for someone, or looking for help um, in implementing that strategy because they don't want to do it and they don't have the capabilities to do it, and the expertise with it. And so that's where we step in. I mean, it's just like any other specialty, your GP doctor is not going to do surgery, and that sort of thing. So they're generally looking at it for those two reasons. I would say that's typically why they come to us.
Okay, great. Anything I didn't cover that you think that you kind of want to mention, other than, of course, how people can get a hold of you? But anything I didn't cover, do you think that's really critical in regards to this subject matter?
Well, I think as we kind of started out, I think there's a perception that cold calling is a dinosaur type of marketing technique that doesn't work. And I think that would be the biggest thing I would take away from this, is that I can just tell you from personal experience. As I said, we've made millions of calls and have, hundreds of thousands of leads and appointments generated for our clients. And I can tell you that it's still a very viable marketing technique. And that, but like most marketing techniques, it has to be part of a bigger picture. That it works actually very well with online things like LinkedIn and even Facebook and SEO, all that good stuff. If it's integrated, that's where you really get that synergy. So I would say consider it for if your business, if it makes sense with other things, and as an enhancement, or to use other things to enhance the cold calling. But it's definitely a legitimate, still effective tool for the right type of company and calling the right type of clients.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing is, if you have to measure everything.
Hmm.
You have to measure everything. You have to know when you close a deal, where did it come from? What's the profit you made on it? What was the cost that it cost? You If you can't measure, you can't manage. And so, if you're doing cold calling and you're doing uh, online ads, or you're doing direct mail, you have to have a system in place to trace it all back to see what happened. Because the other part about that too is, you might find that you close more deals and it's more cost effective through Google online ads, but yet those clients don't stick around. Whereas the cold calling, you find that the cost of acquisition is much higher, but those clients stay around for a very, very long period of time. So it gets complicated. But in the end of the day, if you can't track where you're, what's happening, one of the most important things in building a really, really good company is understanding your cost of acquisition and the amount of revenue you make per client,
Hmm.
and also profit per client. So I think I agree with you. I think that cold calling is an avenue. Again, let's go back to something that I said originally. Sometimes making something that's old new again is a competitive advantage, and there's not a shortage of people out there who are willing to make calls for $35 an hour. And if you have a good list and you have a good script, um, and you of course need to have a good product or service,
Right.
then it could be a very, very big part of lead generation. So I get what you're saying. That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank so much Robert Poole from Total Business Results for coming on today. And if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting apps. I mean, we've had over 300 episodes now, and our guests are just excellent, just like Robert is. And please also give us a review if you like today's podcast or any of the ones, as long as it's 5-star. It really helps us get the word out. And if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, please feel free to visit our website at fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com. Robert, if anyone wants to get a hold of you today or whenever, please, could you let us know how we could do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you can go to our website, totalbusinessresults.com. That's got our phone number and contact info. And I'm personally on a lot of the social media, primarily LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, under the Robert Poole with an E, like a swimming pool with an E. And feel free to give us a call. I'd be more than happy to talk to you one-on-one. If you're not sure about the whole concept of cold calling, you think, maybe it'll work, maybe not, be happy to walk you through that. Definitely not a sales pitch, and as some inside information, and we turn away about 90% of the people that call us. So we're not going to try to talk anybody into anything, because we want our clients to succeed. But more than happy to answer any questions and talk to anybody. So feel free to contact us.
Great. Well, that's good advice. Robert, thanks for coming on. And, it was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, have a great day. Continue to work hard on growing your business. I think lead generation is such a big part of that. And, continue to keep trying to get better. All right. Have a good day, everybody.